But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hope Church. If you're new, my name is Jason. I'm the lead pastor on staff. And like Nathan said, today we are wrapping up our series, Crazy Like Us. And the whole idea of the series is really simple. We're not ashamed to acknowledge we're kind of crazy. That's just part of what we do as a church. But we've been inviting you, if you're newer to Hope, or if you've started coming in the last 12 months or so, to evaluate and say, hey, maybe you are kind of crazy and you want to be crazy like us, because what we're doing with our church right now is a little bit crazy, but I'll tell you all about that later in the message. Grab your programs if you would. There's places for you to take message notes as we go along today. There's also a card in there. We don't need that now. We'll use that later on in the service. Now, we live in a day and age, unfortunately, when people's words don't necessarily mean anything anymore. When you listen to what politicians have to say, when you listen to what people in power have to say, when you listen to perhaps what your boss says or your subordinates say, people will say things that they don't mean. They will say things that they aren't true. They will say things just to look good or to get you off their back or to distract you for a little while. But as we say in our world, talk is cheap. Talk doesn't necessarily mean something. Now, if you know someone and they have good character, you get to know them when they say something that means something. But in general, in society, we live in a day and age where talk is cheap. That's why we say things like, if you really want to show us that you're serious, put your money where your mouth is. Your mouth is saying this one thing, but why don't you put your money there? Or we just shorten that statement up by saying, money talks. I forget how the rest of it goes, but I remember this part, money talks. If you want to know if somebody is serious about something, pay attention to what they're willing to do with their money. See, some people look at me and they say, wow, Jason, you're such a man of God. I'm like, how can you tell? Because you say wonderful things on stage. Well, yeah, the lights are on and the cameras are rolling. I have to say something, but that doesn't actually tell you very much about me. It just means I'm an orator. What you need to pay attention to is, what do I do with my money? If you really know what I want to value, if you really know who I am, if you really want to know it's a priority in my life, you should follow the money trail, because money talks. That's because we live in a world where money is the tool we use to ascribe value to items or to commodities or to goods or to certain skills. For example, if after church you want to go and get your grocery shopping done for the week, you can go to your favorite grocery store, and every single item in that grocery store has assigned value. What is it? It's the price tag. Every single item says this has assigned value, and money is how we assign the value. And you can walk through the store and you can decide, is the cheap loaf of bread for $1 better, or is the nice loaf of bread for $2.50 better? And you can decide what's it worth to you, but we've assigned value to those things. Or you can go to the restaurant after the service is over and you can decide, is the $15 brunch for stale waffles and bacon that have been left out in the buffet line worth it for me? That's the assigned value. You can decide, but that's how we value things in our world. Your paycheck, that shows how our society values whatever skills you bring. And if you were to get more education or more experience, your paycheck or your pay level might go up because we're assigning more value to whatever it is that you do. Or if you bring in more sales or get more work done, you might have more income because money is how we assign value. And unfortunately, we live in a society where NFL quarterbacks have more perceived value than whatever you do. So you will never earn as much as Aaron Rodgers. That's just how society works. But that's all money does. It talks because it reveals, as a society and as individuals, what it is that has value to us. That's all money is. It's just a tool that assigns and ascribes values to items, goods, commodities, and skill sets. Money talks. So here's what I want you to imagine for a moment. Imagine that your money could literally talk. Imagine that your money could speak out loud. It could speak words. If your money could talk, what would it say about you? Imagine we could bring your money on stage and hand it a microphone, and you have to sit there in the audience. And we just held the microphone in front of your money, and your money started to talk about you. What would your money say? What would it say about what you value? What would it say about what you love? What would it say about what you prioritize? What would it say about what doesn't matter to you? What would it say about your emotional health as you interact relationally with your money? If your money could talk, what would it say about you? I think, Christian or not, this is an important question that you should have a handle on, because like I said last week, you spend more of your adult life earning and spending and managing money than any other activity. I think you should have a good answer to this question. What would your money say about you? Or imagine if your money could talk, but it wanted to have an intimate conversation with you. Your money just wanted to chat with you one-on-one over a coffee table. If that could happen, if your money could talk, what would it say to you? Imagine that your money cared about you, and your money had your best interests at heart. And your money wanted you to experience flourishing as an individual. So if your money could speak with you privately, what would it say to you? Now, I bet you already have an answer to that question. It's funny, isn't it? Because money talks. But here's what you might not realize. Jesus spoke about money all the time. And if you haven't caught on yet, again this week I'm talking about money. If you weren't here last week, I warned you I'm talking about money today. So if you miss, you should really go online and watch the message, because then you would have known I was talking about money, and you could be grocery shopping right now instead of in church listening to the preacher talk about money. But Jesus talked about money all the time, and what's fascinating is what Jesus said about money is probably what your money would say to you if your money cared about you. What Jesus said about money is probably what your money would say if it wanted you to experience flourishing. Because what Jesus said about money is so incredibly helpful. Because we live in a world which pushes us in a direction when it comes to our finances that doesn't lead to satisfaction and contentment and joy. But Jesus steps in and he said, money is a blessing from God to you because he loves you. So if we're managing it properly, the appropriate emotional response to money is thankfulness, it's gratitude, it's satisfaction, it's joy. So he spoke into the topic so that we could get it right when it comes to our personal finances. And he said so much about the topic of money. Today, we're going to look at a parable that Jesus taught about money. And if you're new to the Bible, a parable is a story that Jesus made up. It never happened. But sometimes if you say something directly to someone, our emotions can get involved. But sometimes he told parables, so it's kind of this third-person story, so we could look at it objectively and think about it without our shields going up. And he tells a parable about money one time, and the opening line of his parable goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was a man who had extra wealth. Now, this isn't the literal translation. This is the New International Jason translation of how the parable goes. But I want you to know up front, because Jesus taught something that was specifically for the people who had extra money. In fact, both Jesus and the biblical authors spent a lot of time saying, this part over here, I just want to address the people who are rich. This part over here, I want to address the people who have extra money and extra wealth and extra possessions. Now, the reason why I want to tell you that up front is because what Jesus says today is only for those of us who have extra wealth. Now, if you have extra wealth, I want to know who I'm talking to. Would you go ahead and raise your hand real high if you have extra wealth? Go ahead, get it up real high. We want to know who all the rich people are. You know, when my kids were little, in the most innocent way you can imagine, like only a child can, they would say, "Dad, are we rich?" Now, something inside of me said, "No, we're not rich." But then when I was honest and objective, I told my kids, "Actually, son, yeah, we're very wealthy." And we are. I have bad news and I have good news, and I can't believe I get to share this with you again because some of you have heard this before. You're actually rich. Let me explain. If your average household income is in line with the average U.S. household income of $50,000 per year, you are among the richest 1% of people alive today. 1%ers in the room. We got a lot of 1%ers in the room today. And if you're in the 1% highest percentile of wealth, there's no way around it. You're rich. You just are. If you're in the top 10%, you're rich. Or if you want to look at it from a different angle, because you don't feel rich, because we always compare ourselves to people who have more, let's look at it from a different angle. Imagine you're walking down the beach and you find an old lamp and you rub it and the genie comes out with a time machine. This is like an awesome genie. And the genie says, "I'm going to make you a deal. I will either make you the richest person in the world if you're willing to hop into this time machine and live 100 years ago, or I'll let you keep your current life with your current level of possessions and wealth." Which do you think would be better, your current life with your wealth and possessions, or to be the richest person in the world just 100 years ago? Now, if you're not sure what that looks like, let me give you a couple of examples. Take out your phone and look at it and compare it with the finest telephone from 100 years ago, okay? Which phone? The richest man on planet Earth probably had this model right here. Pretty nice. You can twist it all the way around and get your fingers to work out. Or what about a vehicle? You say, "My car is a piece of garbage." You could have had this fine, shiny beauty right here. It's a little chilly on those November Wisconsin mornings, but it's a nice ride. It's old Model T, made in 1919. Or what about air travel? Did you know it was possible for the richest man in the world to fly across the Atlantic Ocean 100 years ago? Well, not quite. It's more like 98 years ago. This was the first airplane that flew across the Atlantic Ocean. It was the Navy Curtiss airplane. And what they wanted was a way to get across the ocean without getting hit by German U-boats. And so they made 4 of these. One of them made it across the ocean. It needed boats at certain intervals to guide it. And it had to make 6 stops along the way and took 23 days to make the first transatlantic flight. And the richest man in the world could have bought a ticket, gotten all the way to Britain. You see what I'm getting at? Which would you rather have? Who has a higher quality of living? Who has a higher standard of goods and services? It really doesn't matter how you look at it. The reality is, you're rich. I'm rich. I have extra money. You have extra money. Now, I'm not being demeaning. I know that some of us are in definite, real financial hardship, and I respect that. We're all in different places, but the overwhelming majority of us in the room, we have extra money. And now that's nothing to be ashamed of. God determined when we would live. God determined all these things we would have access to. That was all God's plan. And like I said before, God gives us wealth as a blessing. He's kind. He loves us. Which means if we want to enjoy the riches and wealth that we have, we need to understand how to approach them in a way that is both godly and healthy. So Jesus tells a parable about a rich man that helps us with this. But before he tells the parable, he gives an interesting preface to it. He says, "Watch out." Now, imagine that you're out golfing and you get on that first tee box and you let it rip and it sprays wide. It's never happened to me, but it sprays wide right towards another group of golfers. What do you yell out? 4. Why? Imminent danger's coming and you're not aware of it. Take cover. Jason's on the tee box, all right? That's what you do. Or if you're at a baseball game and a foul ball goes over the netting or over the fence, what do you yell? Heads up. Why? There's imminent danger coming and you might not be aware of it. You need to pay attention to what's going on. You don't know what's happening around you, but imminent danger is here. Jesus, before he launches into the parable, says, "Watch out!" Why? because there's imminent danger coming and we're probably not aware of it. So to make us aware of it, he says, hey, heads up. He says, watch out, there is danger coming, pay attention. Now he says it again because we're not paying attention. Be on your guard. Do you know what be on your guard means? It means pay attention. There are bad guys trying to get into the city gates. Be on the lookout. Be vigilant. Pay attention. Be on your guard against what? All kinds of greed. Are there any greedy people in the room today? We already know there's rich people. Any greedy people? Okay, we have even less hands this time because we're not taking Jesus seriously. You see, he says watch out because there's danger that we're not aware of. I say, how many of you are greedy? 3 hands go up. What does that mean? It means Jesus is right. There is a danger here that we're not aware of. So he's yelling he's yelling heads up, he's yelling watch out and be vigilant because there is a danger of greed. You know what greed is? Greed is an internal attitude. It doesn't matter how much or how little you have. It's an internal attitude of discontentment with whatever it is that I have. Greed is an attitude that says my life will be better when I get more. Greed is an attitude that says whatever comes my way, not only do I deserve it, but whatever comes my way is for me to consume now, or it's for me to put in reserve so I can consume it later. It's for me to consume now, or it's for me to consume later. That's what greed is. And Jesus says, watch out. Now, here's why he says watch out. How many of you, raise your hand if you've ever known a greedy person? Have you ever known a greedy person? Raise your hand. Okay, more hands this time, right? Tell me something. Are they fun to be around? Like, man, I really enjoy going out to lunch with a greedy person. That's fun. Well, you ordered the sour cream on the side. That's an extra 35 cents on your part. No, that's no fun at all. Greedy people are not emotionally healthy people either. So we've all met greedy people. Jesus says you don't want to be a greedy person. It's not a good way to live. It's not a healthy way to live. So watch out. Be on your guard. Pay attention. And then he says this, and none of us think this applies to us. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Now, we hear that and we say, well, of course not. I know that my life isn't measured by how much stuff I have. I know my life isn't measured by how much wealth I have. You say that right here. But again, what is your heart saying? What are your emotions revealing when it comes to finances, when it comes to possessions, when it comes to good, when it comes to current levels of income? Are you thankful, satisfied, joyful, or discontented, anxious, fearful, worried? It's not about a volume amount. It's about an attitude of the heart, which is greed. And Jesus says, watch out for it because you're living as if your life consists of the abundance of your possessions. Then he launches into the parable before we can all say, but I'm not greedy. He launches into a parable, third party, so we can all let our shields down and just look at this other guy over here. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. So he makes up the story. There's a guy, and at the beginning of the story, he's already rich. And he has a bumper crop one year. So the rich just keep getting richer. It's always been happening that way. Apparently in the parable, it was already happening in Jesus' day. So he said, there's a rich guy. He has an amazing year, bumper crop, and he gets even richer because he has a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. In other words, man, I've really got a problem on my hands. I have so much stuff, I don't even have room for it. I have so much wealth, I don't even have room for it. The crops are so good this year, my barns aren't big enough, my house isn't big enough, my basement isn't big enough. What am I going to do? This is a real problem. You see the audience is already feeling bad for this guy. You know that person, don't you? Yeah, all of our kids didn't have their own bedroom that was 300 square feet, so we moved into a new house. Oh, I feel bad for you. You had to move. Then he said, this is what I'll do. The guy in the parable says this. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and goods. So he's got so much extra wealth, he can just rip it all down, build bigger ones, and then he'll have room for all his stuff. That's his solution to the problem. And I'll say to myself, self, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. Which means that for most Americans, this is the bullseye we are shooting for. It's the American version of retirement. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying let's pay attention to what it is. This is the goal for most of us, to save up enough stuff that you can take many years off, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, that's not a bad thing. If you read through the book of Proverbs, there are many Proverbs that talk about how only a wise person sets aside for the future and saves for the future and is ready for whatever adversity comes along. That's a good thing, and that's not the problem here. Jesus gets to the problem and what happens next in the parable. But God. What was his plan? Build bigger barns, build bigger house, and I will be good to go for many years. He factored in every scenario but one, and that is God. He never looked at his incredible wealth from God's perspective. But God said to him, "You fool," to which every person in Jesus' audience would have said, "Fool? This guy's brilliant. He beat the system. He got rich. He got rich and then he got richer. We want to be this guy. We're trying to emulate him. What do you mean he's a fool?" And Jesus says, whoa, 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 whoa. He's not a fool because he was successful. That's not the problem. Here's the problem. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Wait a minute. How can my life be demanded from me? Did you see how much stuff I have saved up? I'm ready to live for many, many, many years. How can my life run out of years when I'm set to go for many years? See, and we think this way. If we get enough wealth set up, we'll be good to go for many years. That's what his thought process was. But he never considered that he was going to run out of time before he ran out of money. He never factored God into the equation. And here's why this matters for us. We're Americans in the room. I think we all are. And what that means is, like this guy in the parable, we're probably going to run out of time before we run out of money. There are systems in place to help you save for the future. There's Social Security. There's other programs to help make sure that all of us run out of time before we run out of money. And this guy, he was set to go, but he did not factor God into the equation and figure out, why did God bless me with extra? Why did God bless me with all of this extra wealth? This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Answer? Someone else. Not because he was generous, because he was dead. Someone else got everything he had prepared for himself. This is how it will be. How will it be? A total loss. This guy ended up with 2 fistfuls of dirt in the end. He ended up with nothing. He achieved the American dream 17 centuries before there was an America, and in the end, he had a total loss. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, Jesus says, but, and this is the big one, but is not rich toward God. See, Jesus says the problem isn't that he's rich, it's that he didn't know why he was rich. The problem wasn't that he was blessed and prosperous. The problem was that he didn't know why he was blessed and prosperous. But like we said at the beginning of the series, God blesses so that you can be a blessing. We're to be a garden hose, not a reservoir of blessing. God loves to pour in blessing on one end, that we can bless the world out the other end. And Jesus says in the parable that God said to this man, you didn't understand that. You didn't understand the purpose of your extraordinary wealth was to be rich toward God. And that's why you're a fool. Not because you're smart, not because you're successful, not because you're wealthy, but because you were not rich toward God. So if you're taking notes, here's a couple of fill-in-the-blanks that sum up the whole parable. If your extra is all for you, and in your notes you can even write, and yours. If it's all for you and yours, at the end of your life, you will lose everything. You will have nothing to show for your life because your life was all about you. Or here's another way to say the same thing. If you live as if the extra is for yourself, at the end of your life, you will have nothing to show for yourself. Because at the end of your life, you're not going to show up before God and say, look at all my money. Because your money's going to be back here still. God's going to say, what are you going to show for the life that you had on earth? What are you going to show for all of this wealth you had on earth? What are you going to show for yourself? And that's why Jesus says, watch out. Be on your guard, because this approach to wealth is normal in America. Not being rich toward God is normal. So I thought, well, how can we do that? How can we watch out? How can we be on our guard? So I thought, I know. I'm going to make a little exercise for everyone to do, and they're going to hate it, and maybe 10 of them will actually do it, but we're going to do it anyway. It's in your program. You need your phone out, so go ahead and get your phone out. If you have a calculator app, that is. Some of you are smart. I went into theology. I don't know. So get your phone or your calculator app out, because we want to figure this out right here. What does your money say about you? Are you ready to find out the answer to this question? No, nobody's ready to find out what you're like. I already know. I just go to the prayer and end the message. I know what my money says about me. No, we want to see exactly what your money says about you. And you're not turning this in, and you're not showing it to anybody. This is you and your money having an intimate conversation, because I think you should know the answer to this question. Whether you're a Christian or not, you should know what your money says about you. You should know what your money would say to you. That's why we're doing this. You're not going to share it with me. I don't recommend you share it with anybody. You can if you want to, but this is about you and you. We're going to do a quick little exercise in your program. Here's the first thing you write down. How much do you earn? Now, if you know your annual salary, awesome. Write it down really small so no one can see it. Maybe you don't know that, but you know your monthly or your weekly salary, fine. Break it down at that level. Just get that number firmly in your mind. What do you earn? And then you work for it. It's earnings. It's definitely stuff you work for. What do you earn? Okay, you got that number? Gets harder. Second one. How much do you give away? Now, here's why this one's harder. Because instantly in your mind, you go to that one time. You know what I mean? Well, there's that one time I was at that fundraiser charity dinner, and I had too much to drink, and I bid on that one vacation package. Or that golf trip, or that coffee package, whatever it was, right? Don't go to that one time. What's your systematic, scheduled, planned generosity to be rich toward God? If you're not a Christian, to be rich towards charities that are making the world a better place. In actuality, what is your automated plan that you give away? If you're looking at the weekly interval, fine. Monthly interval, fine. Annual, just match it up with how much you earn, weekly, monthly, or annually. Go ahead and write it down. Don't let anybody see it. Third thing. What's the percentage? Now, here's how you find that out. You take this number and you divide it by that number. This is the part where you need your calculator. You take this number, go ahead, get your phone out, get your calculator out if you want to, and divide it by that number, and that gives you the percentage. And your task is to say, what does your money say about you? I have no idea what your money says about you. I'm not your money. I don't know your money situation. To which you say, Jason, but there's other factors that influence what my money says about me. Oh, I know, I agree. You're right. I'm just telling you what Jesus' standard was. This isn't my idea. This is what Jesus taught about being rich toward God. When you look at this, and again, if you're not a Christian, well, what do you give away to help people in need? Just leave it at that. It's an honest question. You should know the answer. What does your money say about you? Now, Jesus knew that this parable would rattle us. That was his intention. His intention was to rattle you, to frustrate you, to concern you, to put your shields up a little bit and say, yeah, but. And the worry comes up, and the fear comes up, and the anxiety comes up. All these emotions. He intentionally told this parable in this way to stir this up inside of you, to bring us to what he said next. Here's what he said. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this one. What story is your money telling? Well, I already said that, I just didn't fill in the blank. What story is your money telling? And here's what he said after this, after he stirs up all of this inside of us. He says this, do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. This is such an amazing sentence. I want you to think about it. Do not be afraid, little flock. What is he calling you? What is he calling us? A little flock of sheep. Now, a sheep might get concerned. I don't have food to eat, and it will go wandering off, and it will wander off away from where the actual food is. The shepherd has to come back and say, no, guide it over here. This is actually where you're going to flourish, little sheep. And we get all worried, but if I do what God asks me to do, I'll go hungry, I won't have enough, I already don't have enough. And Jesus wants to say, hey, little sheep, little flock, don't worry. And here's why you don't have to worry, because your Father, he mixes metaphors, but if you're the Son of God, you can mix metaphors. Your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. And I think his audience would have laughed at that, because they're imagining this little flock of sheep, and the king of the land comes along and says, I bestow the kingdom into your care, flock of sheep. That's what he's saying. What he's saying is, you have a Father in heaven who has an inheritance for you in heaven. Little flock, this is so temporary. Here's how we would say it today. He would say it today, there's a 24-year-old kid, and there's been a trust fund set up that becomes his at the age of 25, and there's $20 million in this trust fund, and the 24-year-old kid is complaining about how hard it is to make ends meet. What would you say to this 24-year-old kid if he's complaining about how hard it is to make ends meet if when he turns 25, he gets a $20 million inheritance? What would you say to this kid? You would say, shut up. That's what you would say, right? You just have to figure this out for this tiny little window, and then you are set. We all want to be you. That's why we hate you. We all want to be you. What Jesus is saying is, when we get worried about wealth on earth, he says, little flock. He doesn't say, shut up. I would probably say that. He says, little flock, your Father's giving you the kingdom. A kingdom that will last forever. That no recession can touch. That no thief can steal. That no rust can eat away at. Little flock, you have the kingdom. And you have this very little time to do something that lasts forever in your life. This little window of time, this sliver of time before that trust fund kicks in, and you're with God forever in heaven. The kingdom is yours. Don't worry, little flock. Don't be afraid. Sell your possessions. That's my little slip. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. That's the amazing thing. Jesus didn't say, give to me. He said, there's people in need. Help them out. Give to the poor. Provide purses for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. Here's what Jesus says. Your currency that you value so much, the bottom is about to fall out, and it's about to become worthless. That's what he's saying. And the equivalent, to help us wrap our minds around it, is imagine if you lived during the Civil War era and you lived in a southern state and all your currency is Confederate dollars and you know the war is about to end. What are you going to do with all your Confederate dollars while they still have value? Convert them into something that will have value after the war is over. That's what you would do. Gold, commodities, goods, whatever. These are about to be valueless, but you can convert them into something that will have lasting value. That's what Jesus is inviting us to do. He said, you're rich, we're rich. In fact, I wonder, I can't prove this, I have nothing to substantiate this. I wonder if Jesus wasn't thinking of us when he told some of these parables 20 centuries ago. Because in his culture, if he said something just to the rich people, that was a small part of his audience. But he knew that there would be a day when his people in America would be very rich. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't thinking that. But what he is saying is this: if you have wealth, if you have extra wealth, and we do, the value of our currency is about to drop to zero. But you have this limited amount of time in your life to convert it into something that has lasting, eternal value. That's why he says, provide those kind of treasures for yourself. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, wherever your money goes, it's connected to your heart, and your heart follows your money. So he says, invest in the kingdom. That's the point of everything Jesus teaches in this chapter. Your extra is for investing in heaven. Converting our currency into a currency that matters and has eternal value, investing in God's kingdom. Now, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this for a while. But if you're newer to Hope, we're in the middle of a 2-year generosity initiative as a church. It's called the Second Stage Initiative because our first stage as a portable church has been absolutely amazing. We've seen God show up again and again and again in surprising ways as a church. But now it's time for us to go to the next stage where we move beyond portable and we establish a facility of our own. And that is not the finish line. Honestly, this facility for us as a church is going to be the starting line. See, the portable church stage, that's just us stretching out and warming up. And now once we get into a facility, now we're at the start line and we're really going to go forward because we want to have a big impact in the church. Hope Church is not for us. Hope Church is for people who are not Christians yet. And there are more people in our community and in the communities around us that do not know Jesus, and we are going to share the gospel with them, the good news that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and he rose on the third day, and we have this treasure in heaven. So let's be wise and make the most out of our small windows of time on earth to make a big difference in people's eternities forever. This is going to be the start line for us, but we need a big push from everybody to get over this hurdle to that stage. Thus, the Second Stage Initiative. From December of 2018 to December of 2020, we're encouraging everyone who calls Hope their church. We're encouraging you, if you call Hope your church, to go before God and ask God, what should my level of generosity toward you be through the Second Stage Initiative? God, this is about me and you. My money's talking over here. What is it saying about me? What are you saying about me? Okay, God, you tell me, what should my level of generosity be? And between now and December of 2020, practice that level of generosity. And we're going to do 3 things with it. We're going to do more ministry than ever before. We're already doing that. Like I said, in week 1, our church has grown by 12% since we started the Second Stage Initiative. We're setting aside money for a facility, and we're giving away more than we've ever given away to our partner nonprofits and charities, and we're honored that we get to make the difference for them as well. Now, I want to give you an update on some things that have been happening over the last month. As many of you know, we have an accepted offer on a piece of property. It's about a half-mile due west of the Aurora Hospital and Summit, right off the interstate there. And we've made a lot of progress. We're really close to coming up to the big decision on whether or not the village is going to rezone it for us. Keep that in your prayers, but it's looking very positive right now. But keep praying for that because we want to get that approved so we can close on the property. And we would love to be able to break ground on this facility coming up in the springtime. So definitely keep that in prayers. But part of the rezoning process is we have to submit renderings of how our building is going to be laid out and how it's going to look, and they have to say, yeah, that looks good here. So we're actually going to give you a few examples of what our new building is going to look like, and this is all because of your generosity. So we've got these plans, and we're moving forward with that as a church. Now, again, this is not about getting into a building, and it's a beautiful building, and the layout is extraordinary inside. It's so efficient. I absolutely love it. But this is just a tool. This is not the treasure. This is just a tool to help us pursue the treasure. Jesus is our treasure, and we love him, and we serve him, and we lift up his name. This is just a tool to help us do that as a church. Maybe you've heard me use this illustration before. Imagine you go out into your backyard and your neighbor has a bar of gold in his hands and he's digging and he's saying to himself, I know there's a shovel buried here somewhere in my yard. And you're like, Bob, whoa, buddy. You use the shovel, the tool, to get the treasure, the bar of gold. You've already got the treasure. Stop digging. Okay, this is not our treasure. Jesus is our treasure. This is just a tool. That's all it is. And it's going to help us tell more people about our treasure, and that is Jesus. And that's why I'm inviting all of you, to, if you haven't yet, to jump in with your generosity to make a difference in Second Stage. In fact, we're going to show you several stories of several people right here at Hope about why they're turning up their generosity. Let's take a look.
Hope has changed our lives because we have truly found the Lord in this church, in this family, and we just want to be able to let other people experience the same thing that we've experienced and have the Lord come into their lives and know that they'll be changed as much as our lives have been changed.
God's hand is truly on this church. We believe that.
We really enjoy singing with the music and listening to the music, and it moves my heart so much to be living with the words of the Christian music.
We just love the music, but stayed for the message and the gospel, and love the church and love the congregation.
When we started at Hope and there was less than 100 people per Sunday, and now to see what's happened from less than 100 to over 500 a week, seeing that growth in a short amount of time is really awesome.
One thing that I absolutely love about Hope is that it's never been about the building. It's never been about, hey, look at us, we've doubled our size or tripled our size in X amount of years. They care about their community.
I would say finding Hope was a big part of us deciding to stay in this area.
Right.
I feel like someone who's never been in a church before could walk into Hope and they can get something out of it. And someone who's, been a Christian for years or grew up in church or whatnot, there's something for them too.
We were lost and broken, and God found us through Hope, and we're going to do the same and help others.
We have not arrived, and we are a work in progress.
Oh, yeah.
And that is, and at Hope, that's okay.
God has incredible plans for this church, and we are so excited and so happy to be a part of it. It's a great opportunity.
Hope's meant a lot to us. It's really made the Word of God and who Jesus is in our lives come alive to us.
We're really about reaching people, that's the goal here, focusing on what we're doing and reaching people who don't know Jesus. And that's super important for me because I didn't know Jesus, and Hope completely changed my life. Hope is a big reason of why I'm such a strong believer now, and we're really doing something good here.
So here's what we're going to do next. In your program, I mentioned earlier, there's a card. I want you to please go ahead and grab that card out of your program. And depending on where you're at in relationship to Hope and where you're at in relationship to Second Stage, this is what you do next. If we're your church, or if you're ready to jump in and make us your church, then on the back of the card, you fill that out. If you missed second stage with us last year and you say, I don't want to miss out on this. I want to take some of my riches and I want to invest them in heaven and make that kind of eternal difference with all these hundreds of people, then you just write your name and you say, I'm jumping in, and tell us how much you plan to give between now and December of 2020. And some of you say, well, what difference is that going to make? I only have this much. I mean, you already have your building drawn. What difference is it going to make? First of all, it's not about making a difference for us. It's about God making a difference in your heart and giving you the opportunity to take some of your currency, which is going to become worthless, and invest it in something that matters and align it with the heart of your Father in heaven. That's what this is about. And it makes an incredible difference. What you give won't, what I give won't, but what all of us together, that's what moves things forward in an exciting way. So if you're ready to jump in, and we'll give you a moment here to talk with whoever you came to church with, you say, yeah, I want to jump in. You write that down. For those of you who were here last year, we still want you to fill this out. Your part is in the middle. Like, yeah, I'm staying right where I'm at. And if anything's changed, you can note that it's changed. We all understand your circumstances change. And you write your name on it, and after I give you a moment and pray, we're going to come forward in the room and place these in the buckets right up here while the band is singing a song. So I'm going to pray, we'll give you a moment, and then we'll do that. Father in heaven, thank you for the incredible ways you've blessed us in our lives with wealth, with prosperity, with abilities to go out and use them and serve other people and get paid for it. That's an incredible blessing. I thank you for the people of Hope Church, because this church has never been about the ability or the sacrifice of the few. It's been about the contribution and the sacrifices of the many. And you've taken the little that all of us have as individuals, but you've taken it as we've put it into your hands, and you've multiplied it, and you've made it grow for your glory and your kingdom. Thank you for letting us see that and watch that go forward. That inspires such hope in our lives. As some of us wrestle right now with generosity, Lord, I ask for the courage to trust you, to trust what you say, to look forward to heaven, to let go of greed, and have arms wide open to your matchless love. May our lives, may our words, and may our wealth honor you and make a difference in your kingdom. The amounts we write down today, we ask that you would take that and multiply it. Give us the peace that comes only from having a clean heart and aligning our lives to be in the center of your will. We ask this in Jesus' name.